Welcome to Liturgical Shenanigans, a Wayfolk Arts podcast, with your hosts, Hannah,
Phil,
Jackson,
and Maddie.
Hello! Welcome to Liturgical Shenanigans. We are here today to talk about Lent. We, as a team, have sort of decided to take on the theme of dust together this Lent. So today we're going to talk a little bit about Lent and why we chose dust and sort of what we imagine engagement with that topic looks like over this season. So,
well said.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, if you've been tracking along with like social media and stuff, we have been posting one-ish or two-ish posts per week around the topic of dust, or not even the topic, using dust as a focus through which to engage Lent.
I like that.
Which is interesting. So sorry.
No, you.
Because it's called Ash Wednesday, not Dust Wednesday.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but you say like the line
that you
is
are dust.
Why isn't it, and to dust you shall return? Lovely. Why isn't it Dust Wednesday? Is it ash as a type of dust?
Interesting.
Yeah, I wish I'd prepared a little bit about this.
It's almost as if
Well, I can't talk about the whole history on this, but
We're
I mean,
trying
it's a
our
pretty liturgically normal thing. I don't know when it started or how many churches do it or who doesn't, but like to burn the palms of...
Right.
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 So, I mean, so the ash is the dust of the dead. I was thinking about this with,
Dust
this is
of the
morbid,
dead.
but here's where I'm going to go is one of my first posts I was going to do, and I'm not going to do this because I couldn't do it without feeling weird. Maybe I will. But so my dog, when I was a kiddo, was named Dusty. I know. This all sounds fake.
No, it doesn't.
Well, it sounds like chicken soup for the soul or something. I had a dog, Dusty.
Oh, sure.
And he died. Like he died when I was still in high school, and it was, I mean, in my immediate family, sort of the first death of
Oh, yeah.
Did you burn him?
So yeah, he was cremated. And
Oh, that's the proper term. So sorry.
did you burn him? And so like there was a little dog sculpture down by where I had an herb garden, and we, sprinkled him around where places he liked and whatever. But this whole, I have this really vivid memory of when so he had a stroke and was sort of paralyzed, and we took him out and kind of like put him in the back of the truck, and we had to like pick him up and put him in, and he was still in his eyes, but he couldn't like move at all, and I didn't go with to the vet, and so that was kind of my goodbye. And like I took off his collar, and I just have this like this profound moment of mortality and I want to say humanness, even though he was a yellow lab.
That feels. I think
for sure.
the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the collar has Dusty's name on it, so this kind of dusty farewell. Anyway, I don't know. That was where I went with dust.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
First, and it was ash.
Well, right. I get ash is a type of dust. It's just we don't even say ash
No.
at all liturgically, except for the name of the Wednesday.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's so. I mean, the little
Other than
bit,
you're going to receive your ashes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. A little bit that I recall, and I'm piecing it together, and surely someone listening to this actually knows. So feel free to comment and tell us about the actual etymology of Ash Wednesday. But the ashes, I think, comes from the ashes and sackcloth references in the Old Testament. And so in a time of mourning or a time of penitence or a time of noting the loss of something or something not well in the world, you would put on sackcloth and ashes.
That makes more sense than it being related to cremation, because early church, being cremated was actually a non-Christian burial.
Sure.
Right.
So, interesting.
Yeah. And so I think it goes into the Christian liturgical moment via the early church and the early Catholic Church, kind of forming it into a ritual around Ash Wednesday. But that's a very brief sum up of what I'm sure is.
Yeah. Well, so and on Ash Wednesday we say, or as you receive your ashes, the person giving you the ashes will say, usually, from dust you came, to dust you shall return, which comes from Genesis. When in Genesis?
It's the, I don't know,
Genesis
the end of the
3.
curse.
Genesis 3,
Yeah, it's the curse.
Yeah. It comes right after you'll, work the land,
Yeah.
and it will resist you.
Which is really interesting because Adam's name means like dirt.
Yeah.
Yeah, or
Dust,
there's a
kind of.
a play on
Adam's a bit
Dirt,
dusty
yeah.
Clay.
yeah.
because he came from,
Adam.
like, God breathed life into the dirt and the dust. And so over Lent, we think about God breathing life into us from the dirt and the dust.
Which is such this is the interesting thing for me, because this is what I wound up doing my post on. And I've said in my post, if you happen to see it, but I'll say it again here, Lent is often an elusive liturgical beat for me. I don't quite know what to hang my hat on in it. And we had a great conversation the other day where I was talking about, we're dust, but we're like eternal dust, which is like the most Enneagram 3 take on on the dustiness of Lent. But it is an interesting thing to note that, like, Adam is made from dust. So and that dust is that is dependent upon God, that is breathed life into in God, and yet was entrusted with the care of creation and was a good part of creation prior to the fall in that narrative.
Well, and specifically that it's dust and not like good fertile soil. Like, I don't think of in rich life growing soil when I think of the word dust. I think of dry dirt or literally dead things.
Right,
like
tumbleweeds
dead
and things.
pieces of skin become dust in your home. Yikes, sorry.
Yep.
Yeah.
I was thinking that too, that dust, apart from the biblical narrative, but maybe in there too, but dust is typically what we use to describe death in general. Like if it's a dusty road, we're thinking abandoned, empty. I could say like it's a muddy road or a dirt road or an overgrown road, and it's not the same image as a dusty.
And your home gets dusty when you're not paying attention to it very well. And yeah, I often feel a little bit of shame when, like, the light catches all the dust that's all over our bookshelves. But also, when light catches dust in the air, it's really kind of beautiful and looks like sparkles.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I have an opposite thing of you, Jackson. I love Lent. It's my favorite liturgical season.
Yeah, same.
Because it focuses on death and mourning, and I love getting to lean into that space. But what's interesting is Lent for me is also about surrendering to our dusty forms so that we can be remade, remolded, rebirthed, whatever. And surrender requires a large amount of active trust, and it is the thing I am the worst at with people and with God. And I think that's also why a part of me loves leaning into it, because it's a challenge, which is the most Enneagram 8 thing. And I like challenges. But allow me to share a story with you all that I just think is ironic and funny. So one of the biggest things with surrender that I struggle with is leaning into rest and allowing myself to, like, recharge. And I preached on that for Ash Wednesday in 2021, and we pre-recorded the sermon because church was still, at least at that time, we were in, like, another lockdown because cases were so high and you couldn't come in person for Ash Wednesday, yada, yada, yada. So we pre-recorded it on Valentine's Day, which is also kind of lovely. And I preached about how the November before Ash Wednesday, I had to take a month off of work because I was really struggling. And I said something like, I woke up one day and my bones literally ached, and I needed to return to my dusty self and reevaluate what living as Maddie was. So I'm preaching this, talking about how important it is to rest. As my appendix is actively bursting,
Oh my goodness.
and it ended up being removed at like midnight that night / the next day. I ended up in the emergency room within a few hours of preaching, and
Wow.
I was like, it's really funny because it was pre-recorded. 2 days later, you could watch me standing straight, talking about paying attention to your body signals that you need care, resting well, knowing that I was ignoring a glaring body signal. So all that to say, I can speak really pretty words about Lent, and I still really struggle actually leaning into the season well.
Yeah. That, you just talking about sort of like embracing you didn't say this, but like paying attention to your body and the things that it needs and the ways that like it has limits. Is actually also a thing I talk about in my first post that sort of kicks off our dustiness on our social media things. I wrote a poem specifically for Ash Wednesday in 2020 called Dust, and I talk about running headlong into our bodily limits, or just that like we, especially in the culture that the four of us live in currently, there's this expectation of more efficiency, pushing yourself, or like even if it's something we're trying to invite ourselves to let go of, which I know for each of the four of us that is true. And even our culture as a whole is starting to say we need to rest more, pay attention to your body. What if you didn't have to work all the time? Sorts of things. Like, I still know that like I have a tendency to ignore that and be like, but what if I could do a little bit more before I went to bed tonight? And it's just, I just so resonate with that like Lent is a time to remember too bad you can't. Like, as much as you want to not have limits, and as much as you want to be this sort of more than human, more than creature, almost godlike individual who can do all of the things, you're not. We're just stupid hard.
Well, but it's a good and beautiful thing too. That we're the molded, not the molder, right?
Right.
I'm in a class right now, and we're reading the book The Vulnerable Pastor by Maddie Smith, and she talks about how to be human is to have limits, and part of being a good leader is actually leaning into your limitations and knowing them. But how much more profound and beautiful is it to understand that God chose a co-creator relationship with limited humans, that God works in our limits and actually needs our limits and uses our limits and doesn't ask us to be limitless, and that doesn't make us incapable of continuing as God's people, as God's partners in a way, as not God's.
Right. It's actually living more fully into what we were created for, which is to depend on
human.
Yeah, to be human, to depend on the creator and the giver of life and the sustainer of life.
Which swings me into a bit of the work of Lent, because I think my relaxed stance toward Lent is probably from my very different build than Maddie, where like, oh, this is the one where we get to rest. Like, I don't have to feel as much in this one, right? Like, I don't have to be celebratory. We put away a word at the church I go to for all of Lent, the one that we sing over and over and over on Easter. You know that word?
Yeah, the one that we can't say.
You can't say it.
Rhymes with
Obana.
Hallelujah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you can say Hosanna.
Yeah.
Because
we do that one a lot on Easter too.
yeah.
But like the work and effort and whatever of like the praising all the time, we can just kind of like sing some of the slower songs and you know. But so it can be a restier season, which is hard for some and lovely for others. But that's different than going to sleep. And recognizing, so that imperfection piece that you were all talking about.
I didn't say imperfection. I said
No,
limit.
sorry, Hannah was leaning into like being imperfect humans, and well, no, because you were saying that too, as far as like God.
I was making a joke about how I'm perfect still. I just also have limits.
I see. Okay, fair. Well, and I don't know if I love imperfect either, right? But like, right, in I do like it because I want to get to perfectionism. Is where I was kind of going with it, because shame, right? We have so much shame tied up. I have so much shame tied up in the ways that I am not superhuman.
Yeah.
And fail and whatever, and am dusty, right? In all the ways that I am death, you know, all of the ways that I am weak and falling apart, and in all the different aspects of my life. And so, and it's just recognizing for me all of the ways that we in our culture, me as an individual, want to hide our dust. And that was kind of what I tried to do in my first Dusty post, was like the shame we feel. Like we talk about, you walk and you see the sun on your table and you're like, nah, dang it, I'm not perfect. Like I didn't clean everything. But the same is true in, I think, as we age and we try to hide it, right? Like our skin, or as our body shape isn't quite what we want, or right? And all these different dusty things. And I was just talking to someone about this. One of my, probably the only paper I wrote in like undergrad college that I remember well was about that. It was in like my death and dying class, and I called it Our Porcelain Society. And it was this idea that like even the stuff that comes out of us that's sort of often considered death imagery and gross and yucky, we don't only like take that away so that we never really see it.
Right.
We do it in a porcelain bowl. Like for most of us, a shining white porcelain bowl, right? And the room that we do it in is like this sterile, lovely, good-smelling room, and it's just like this. I'm not complaining. Don't have a dirty bathroom for it, but like maybe for Lent, I don't know. But like
That's what I'm.
it's such a lie, though.
Right.
Yeah.
It's such a lie. And then the idea of like how bodies would stay in homes for days, and we don't do that, and how cemeteries would be like at the center of the town, and now it's like, what if we put them, over there by the highway? And as people age and start to change how they can engage, and they start to show their dustiness, we put them in a place where we can go visit them on our time, and yeah, and Lent is a time when I think we're invited to notice that and maybe knock it off for a minute.
Well, and you said the word weak, and I think feeling like it's weak, I mean, it resonates with me at least, and probably resonates with others. But there's actually a strength in being able to lean into limits, into imperfections, and into shame, curiously, not like I'm gonna dwell in my shame, but just what's going on in my shame.
Yeah, there you go. Right, exactly.
It's because it's so vulnerable, so it's strong and brave to be in that space and to sit in it in a non-judgmental, mournfully dwelling, although we're talking about how this is a time to mourn, so maybe that sentence didn't actually make any sense, but hopefully you know what I mean.
I think so.
I think one of the things I'm hearing there is the difference between vulnerability and weakness. And
Right.
And I think what I'm hearing is like that stance of vulnerability and curiosity
Is strong.
Yeah. And to tie it all the way back to the beginning, needs a lot of trust in the equation.
Yes. Yeah.
To be able to engage in vulnerability there has to be a lot of trust in there.
At the seminary that we all went to, when you take Hebrew, that you're given a Hebrew name, and mine was Uftach, which is trust. And I literally thought the professor was playing a joke on me because that was my word. But that was oftentimes, if you're in a worshiping body, you'll be encouraged to gather in Lent around a word or to pick a word. That has been my word for the last, oh my gosh, how many years has it been since 2023?
That's
2023?
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
Hell, Lord.
3-ish.
So anyways, Uftach has
Oh,
been...
wait, since 2020, comma, 3 question
yeah.
mark.
Yeah,
I heard it now.
We got it.
I'm so sorry.
Punctuation matters.
Anyways, has been... it's been my word for the last several Lenten seasons.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe I don't, if this puts a button on it, great. I think what I'm hearing there in the shame, vulnerability, weakness, what I was saying I want to notice is shame that leads me to either hide a thing from myself or hide myself from being seen, or something being seen, as opposed to recognizing the fear, the whatever it is that pushes me toward that shame to hide, and instead, either choose to look at it, which would be the vulnerability piece for me, or allow others to see it. Yeah, and be exposed, be dust.
Yeah.
Have a big
Because-
black mark on my face,
Sure.
literally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, receiving the ashes is so painful for me because it is such an intimate moment. It involves someone touching me and looking into my eyes, and I don't like making eye contact really with anyone for any period of time, let alone like a prolonged one when you're doing something intimate. So even just what we liturgically do on Ash Wednesday is quite vulnerable.
Yeah.
Isn't it fun that it's literally called imposing?
I can't remember the last time.
Yes.
Excuse me, I don't mean to impose, but here's some ash on your face.
I usually ask it to be placed on my wrist. It is really hard. I don't remember the last time I let someone place it on my forehead. Yeah. It may have been one year I filled in and did the imposition of the ashes because we didn't have an associate minister at the time. And because I was at the front, I probably let the pastor put it on my head, but that was for showmanship, which is sorry. That was probably the only thing that like let me do it.
Follow up. Not that I asked a question already. A question on that. How have you done the imposition of ashes? And
Just said that.
so, but you're the one that did it to like the line of people.
I did it to others
How is that for you?
because I can trust
intimacy-wise?
myself, so I know that they're fine.
But the same degree of like physical closeness, physical touch,
It's
eye
okay
contact is
because I'm in
okay.
control. I can trust myself to do this well and to be well intentioned, and I know what's going on in my brain as it's happening. And
So the intimacy of giving is
I
safer.
also will name
Yeah.
it's meaningful to me that I got to do that because
Yeah.
I feel blessed to have people trust me to be in close proximity. But it's I'm in control, so it's not as. It's scary for me from this is a big deal that I'm getting to do this. I want to take it seriously kind of perspective, but it's not the same as me receiving.
I think I had a thought that ties back a little bit. It goes back to what Phil said about. Hold on, I have to remember what Phil said. It was about shame and things being exposed, because Lent is also traditionally this really penitential time. Like confession is a huge part of Lent, and I think for me, just another really important piece of Lent is that sort of waking up to both just like the pain that is occurring in ourselves or in the world around us, but also waking up to the things that have caused that pain, whether that be us, whether that be the systems we're involved in, or are just part of because that's how the world works, or maybe that's outside of us and we're not involved in it, but it's like that's a really hard thing for some people, which is why a lot of people don't like Lent, is because waking up to pain and to wrongdoing is painful. Like to feel other people's pain is really painful, and it's also an Enneagram 4's happy place. It's not.
We should do a whole episode on the Enneagram. For those of you who
It's
don't know
true.
what we're talking about, it's Christian witchcraft.
It's sure.
You're welcome.
If you have questions, please ask us because we obviously like talking about the Enneagram. No, you're good. I just have to remember what.
The 4's happy place.
You were talking about how
Yeah.
Lent is woke.
Sure.
What?
I mean,
Wow,
yes.
it's so interesting. Like everyone is
not what I was
inferring
hearing.
all sorts of things.
No, I just have this memory of this piece that I did in chapel at our seminary. I can't even remember the piece now. I think it was just a longer scripture passage that I memorized and enacted by myself. But I had a few words to speak at the end, and I talked about how the pain of the world is really loud. And I think what happens when you wake up to that pain and to the wrongdoing that caused the pain is you are moved to do something about it, or you are moved to say that pain shouldn't be happening to you, so let's see what we can do to work for a world where it's not happening. And it also, when those things that are causing the pain are bigger than us, we also have to trust that there are, both in our communities and in the God that we serve, this in movement and intention towards this idea of renewal and resurrection and redemption, that someday things will be set right, and we won't have to be in pain or have to witness or find ourselves doing the wrongdoing. And Lent is one of the few times where like we actually get down into that dirt and go, hey, look at this. Don't turn away. Look at this. Now, what are we going to do about it?
It's productive dwelling.
Yeah. And it sucks. I will acknowledge that. But also, it's productive. It's important. We need to do it.
And
It feels the way you talk about it, like unavoidably communal. That like, not to make it any more like meaningless if I give up something significant to me for a period of however many days, right? Give up chocolate, give up TV, fine, cool, right? That might be a great personal challenge. But like what you're talking about that I'm hearing is this recognition of the church's role in the world of, salt, light, redeeming, that creation is being renewed, ambassadors of hope. And I just see that picture of what that whole we are not aloneness really ties in closely there. The trust that like if I'm one white blood cell, I can't fight off anything. Right. But we're part of a bigger body.
which is both lovely and also adds to the scary part because there's accountability there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that's close to the amount of time that we have for this episode about dust, about Lent, about trying to lean into the tension of both the dustiness of our way to represent ourselves in the world, but also how we contribute to some of that pain in the world as well.
And we invite you to lean into dust with us this season.
Yeah, a couple more weeks of Lent still. I'd just be curious to hear your all's thoughts on this one. We've covered a kind of wide range of how to use dust as a focus in this season, and I'm sure some things have knocked loose in your listening of this podcast, and I would love to hear about it. So you can find us on all the social medias: Facebook, Instagram, not all the social medias, the flagship social medias, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at the username at Wayfolk Arts. Or just comment on the however you listen to this podcast on whatever medium it is, and we will eventually find it in the streams of the internet that are the internet. And we'd love to keep chatting about this with you. Thank you for tuning in to this conversation on Liturgical Shenanigans. If you enjoyed this conversation, please share it around to other people who you think might enjoy it as well. We are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all the places. You can find us at the username Wayfolk Arts. And if you're looking for a way to get involved with the show a little bit more, as we said in the episode, head on over to patreon.com/wayfolkarts, where you get to hear more of the show and get access to a bunch of other patron-only posts and things like that. Thank you all for tuning in. It was a delight to spend some time with you. We'll see you in 2 weeks.